is open to the community.
This meeting is being recorded.
It is open to the community and not just for our Georgia TESOL members. So we hope to invite more people in to see some of the fabulous things we are offering this year. Our next session is going to be March 2nd, and it's going to be integrating family and community knowledge in the curriculum of Funds of Knowledge approach. So please join us again on March 2nd, 2023 at 5:30. And now for our speaker, Dr. Elizabeth Webb, who is our Georgia TESOL President.
Thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate that. And let me start sharing my screen. All right, let's start right here. All right, let's see here. I am screen sharing and I want to be screen sharing my, and I want it to be on slideshow. Now, a thing that's always so challenging, I'm mostly on Teams during the day, and then I go on Zoom and it's sometimes so challenging to kind of find where everything is. All right, you guys should see my screen that says Holidays Through a Multicultural Lens. It has kind of a sparkly picture. Do you see it? Yes. Perfect. Okay, wonderful. All right. Well, we are going to be talking about holidays through a multicultural lens, and this is the first one of our series that we are doing this year on student, community, and parent empowerment. And the reason we are focusing on student, community, and parent empowerment is because when we talk about advocacy or talk about, advocating for our students, a lot of times we think we need to do it, but we're kind of rethinking advocacy at Georgia TESOL and thinking maybe what we should do is be working on us being able to empower parents, students, and the community to empower and advocate for themselves. So you will notice there's several sessions coming up, but I'm very excited about the ones that are coming up. One is about teaching kids to self-advocate. That's going to be done by some of our guests from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And then in July, we're going to have July or August, early August, I think, because we're taking a break in July. We're going to have a piece on parent rights and responsibilities. I think it's going to be really powerful, but this is the kickoff of that. Now, why did I get the idea to do holidays through a multicultural lens? Well, I actually was just minding my own business one day last fall, and one of our counselors in the district where I work called me and said, "Elizabeth, could you do something on holidays?" And I said, "Oh, sure, but why?" And she had almost scheduled a pretty significant school event on a major Jewish holiday. And she said, I just didn't have vision into what I needed to be thinking about with our increasing diversity in our school. And, I thought, well, okay, let's start to think about how we think about holidays. So that's where it started out. So we'll try to make this as interactive as possible. We do have 38 people on the call, so I'll probably ask you to post in the chat, and then maybe Donna, since she's moderating for us, can maybe read some of what's going on in the chat, or I can, and then we'll maybe ask some of you to unmute. But the next thing I want to do is I want to ask you, what holidays or traditions do you celebrate yourselves? What do you enjoy celebrating? And please just go ahead and post in the chat.
Okay, Elizabeth, I see April Fool's Day, Chinese New Year, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, I love it. Oh,
yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of holidays.
Nowruz, yes.
I saw up there Nowruz, Shabi Yalda. Oh, wow. Fantastic. Well, so this is the first thing I'm going to say is that we want to honor and hear the voices in the room, because there are many of you in this room that have direct firsthand knowledge of holidays that I have never celebrated myself in my life. So as we are going through this presentation and talking about how we can have a multicultural view of holidays, I am going to be reaching out to ask you to speak about those. And if you'll notice, I did kind of choose not the usual suspect of Christmas, which is so prevalent. And we're just still, I mean, I'm still de-Christmasing my house. You know, it seems like it just takes forever to get all the decorations down. The usual suspect of Christmas is the elephant in the room in the American holiday season. But I chose different holidays. What holidays do you see on the screen? Does anybody want to just post in the chat? Ramadan, yes. Hanukkah, yes. Yep. Diwali, yes, exactly. I think it's Diwali and not Holy. I'm sorry, but yeah, the Festival of Lights, not the Festival of Colors. But yeah, so cool. Yes, exactly. So some holidays from different perspectives. Well, now let me ask you another question. Well, let me see if I can. How do we know? How do we determine what we celebrate? How do we determine what a holiday is? How do we know when to celebrate a holiday? I put a chart up here. This comes from the International Baccalaureate's Theory of Knowledge curriculum, which I'm a little partial to. My own kids went through the IB program in our little local school district here from 4th grade through 12th grade. And I found that they really thought a lot about how they knew what they knew, and they had to write a whole essay about it as part of their high school. And it really made them think. Some ways of knowing we have a bias towards certain ways of knowing in the American typical US society. But what are a lot of our holidays related to? And you can post in the chat again. If you look on the screen there, what do our holidays tend to relate to? Where do they center in this theory of knowledge graph that I put up there? Our faith, yes. Faith, tradition of something meaningful or important. Yes, absolutely. Exactly. A lot of it is about faith. A lot of it is about faith. That's true. And then some of it might be about other things, interactions with self and others. Yes. This faith, customs, the students we teach. Thank you, Tiffany. Religion, spiritual life. And one thing that a lot of the American holidays are connected to, we'll see, our kind of history, but which also connects to our interactions with others and who we perceive ourselves to be today. So holidays have some deep roots. This is not data you find in your student information system. It's not quantifiable in that usual way. So with that said, I just want to remind you guys, so many of you have seen this a million times in a million representations, but you know, when we're talking about culture and we're talking about that concept of the cultural iceberg, which goes back to probably before, but at least to 1976, when that was suggested, that the relationship between culture and an iceberg, and the fact that so much is unseen was suggested by Edward Hall. But what we see on the surface, the surface part of it is not all of the story. So just because we can observe certain things with food or color or certain external things, there is a lot more under the surface. And so that's why I want to propose to us that we need to be curious, we need to be empathetic, and we need to be respectful. Curious, empathetic, and respectful. And there's just an article, I was going to look it up, but I didn't have a chance. So if somebody gets a chance, if somebody feels like Googling, there was just an article, I think it might have been in the Washington Post, about the fact that we are in a 30-year low on empathy. But the good news is that empathy can be taught and empathy can be developed. And I would say that one way that we develop empathy is by being curious and learning about others, and by showing respect for others and thinking about their history and their traditions. So now I'd like to ask you what a holiday is. And I kind of ruined it by going ahead and sticking two definitions up there on the screen. Will you read over those definitions and just reflect with me for a second? What's the difference? Read them over and reflect. So what difference do you see in these two definitions? Oh, thank you, Dr. Chiesa. Yep. The empathy gap fix. Thank you. Honoring ancestral history, Sarah says. Thank you very much, Sarah Forbes. Working versus not working. Yes. Uh-huh. What else do you see in terms of the differences? What's mentioned in one and not in the other? Observance versus obligation. Okay. You know, to me, what stood out when I was looking for these definitions was the fact, and you've already really alluded to it by saying, you know, a lot of holidays have to do with faith, have to do with some deeply held beliefs. A holiday could be a holy day, a day that really has connections with beliefs, or it could be a day that is simply a day when you don't have to work, when you're observing a certain tradition or a certain celebration. So it could go either way. But I think it's really worth thinking about that before we had the habit of taking certain days off to honor a historical occurrence like the 4th of July, or, you know, then before that, it really probably holidays started off almost certainly in terms of connection with people's beliefs. So with that in mind, it is part of that deep culture. It's part of what really is deeply personal to us. So now, what holidays do we observe in Georgia? Well, I didn't try to go and get every school district's calendar because that would have been a chore, but I just putting up there on the screen the holidays that we observe in Georgia. Take a look there. Certain things are not a public holiday, certain things are federal holidays. So New Year's, I don't know what New Year's Day in lieu. I think that means that that's the day you get to take off. Martin Luther King, the state holiday of April 7th. I have a feeling that that's the holiday that they are not saying that is Confederate Memorial Day, but that used to be Confederate Memorial Day. Yeah, because I worked for the state for 11 years. I think that's that day that they didn't want to take away the holiday, but they don't want to celebrate that the way that they used to, which is good that that's not on there. Easter Sunday, Mother's Day. So what do you notice? So whose holidays do we see here? Anybody? Somebody new posted in the chat here. American holidays, exactly. Thank you, Sandy. American holidays. Now, that makes sense, right? American holidays, they reflect something of American history, American traditions. There's a couple of holidays. There's one holiday on there that's brand new. The Juneteenth, Emancipation Day, that's new. Martin Luther King Jr. Day has been recognized in my lifetime. You know, when I was was going to look up the exact date, but I remember very clearly when there was all this debate, should this be a holiday or not? It seems ridiculous that there was a debate about it now, but it has become a part of our regular holiday landscape. So honoring someone for whom we have a great deal of reverence, someone who has contributed to our history, who has contributed to the history of, you know, the civil rights movement and of justice and equity in this country and in the world. Juneteenth, similarly, it will become an established part of the holiday lexicon. But when you look here, you see that certain holidays are just invisible. Certain holidays are just not there. So if you don't celebrate, if these are not the holidays that are important for you, then they're just kind of invisible. Now, it's interesting. Both my kids have studied abroad in college, and also they spent a year abroad in Germany when they were high school students. And it's very interesting. Germany also has separation of church and state like the United States does, but it's a little less pronounced. And the school holidays very much reflect the traditional church annual calendar. You have things like the Feast of the Epiphany that's observed and all sorts of things. So every country has its own holidays. So within the context of our holidays, then how do we make students for whom these are not the major holidays, how do we make sure that they are seen, that they are welcomed, that they are valued, and that they are able to process what the heck is going on with all these American holidays in a way that makes sense to them. And there's no one good answer, but I do believe that, again, going back to that curiosity, empathy, and respect is very, very, very important. Now, all that said, I want to see if you can fill in the blanks. We talked a little bit about the fact that a lot of holidays have to do with belief. So here's a closed text for you. So, and I'm gonna have to try to get my I think that's all of it. Yep, there we go. As of 2010, blank was by far the world's largest religion, with an estimated 2.2 billion adherents, nearly a third of all 6.9 billion people on Earth. Blank was second with 1.6 billion adherents, or 23% of the global population. Can you guess? And I feel free to come off mute. What do you believe is the world's largest religion?
Catholicism?
Catholicism? Could be. Others?
I would say Hindi feasibly.
Hindi? Okay. All right. All right. Good guesses. Good thoughts. Good hypothesis. Anybody else have an idea? All right.
Dr. Webb, I'm seeing Islam and Christianity.
So which is which?
Oh, different people put Islam, someone else said Christianity.
Okay. All right. Well, currently, as of 2010, Christianity was by far the world's largest religion, and Islam was second. So interesting. Except for blank, all the world's major religious groups are poised for at least some growth in absolute numbers in the coming decades. The global blank population is expected to be stable because of low fertility rates and aging populations in countries such as China, Thailand, and Japan. So that gives you a hint of who's not growing. So, all right. So all religious groups are poised to grow. That's a little counterintuitive for Americans these days, because what do we hear in the news in the United States is that they're more the people who are saying, well, I don't have a religious belief, are growing, but that is not happening on the global scale. So what do we think, except for what all the world's major religious groups are poised for at least some growth? This is a kind of hard one. It is actually Buddhism, because there are low fertility rates and aging populations in countries where there's a large number of Buddhists. Worldwide, the blank population is projected to rise by 34% from a little over 1 billion to 1.4 billion, keeping pace with overall population growth. What might that be? Any guesses?
I see Indian, and someone else said Hindu.
Possibly. Okay. And then the smallest religious group for blank, the smallest religious group for which separate projections were made, are expected to grow 16% from a little less than 14 million in 2010 to 16.1 million worldwide in 2050. And what would that be? Anybody? That is Judaism. And I believe the one prior to that, I need to actually check because my little cheat sheet is hard to read, but I believe that is Islam. But I will double check that one. Now, let's look at our projections for moving ahead. Current trends, if they continue, Islam will be equal with Christianity by 2050. In the world at large, not in the United States, in the world at large, people who don't affiliate with a religion, it's increasing in France and the United States and other, Western countries, but that's a declining share of the world population. So as people migrate to the United States, they are not as likely, they are more likely to be affiliated with a religion. In Europe, Muslims will be at 10% of the population. India will retain a Hindu majority, but will also have the largest Muslim population of any country in the world, and it will surpass Indonesia in that regard. And then Christians are going to decline in the United States from more than 3/4 of the population today to 2/3 in 2050. And Judaism will no longer be the largest non-Christian religion in the United States. Muslims will be more numerous in the US than people who identify as Jewish. And 4 out of every 10 Christians in the world will be in sub-Saharan Africa. This is from the Pew Center, the Pew Research Center, and very interesting. So that gives us a global picture of what's going on. Beliefs and people, we have a tendency to assume that what's going on in our country, in our culture, is what's going on in the world, and that more and more people are going away from beliefs, but that's not the truth. And so here we can see the size and projected growth of major religious groups. Now, I don't know about your school districts, but in my school districts, we are getting a lot of new EL students. And most of the ones we are getting right now are Spanish-speaking students from Central America, Central and South America. Where are your EL students coming from these days? Ukraine and Russia. Thanks, Fiorella. Central America, same as Honduras. Yep. So depending on where kids are coming from, they and their families are going to represent different traditions. I work up north of Atlanta in Cobb County, but I live in DeKalb County. And the EL population in DeKalb County has a much greater diversity in terms of holidays and religious beliefs than they do up in Cobb County, where it tends to be a predominantly 85 to 90% Spanish or Portuguese speaking population. And their background tends to be Catholicism, not always, but it does tend to be. So we just need to kind of keep these things in mind, because we need to get to know, as we understand these trends, then these trends help us have context for the students who are walking into our schools, because we need to get to know our students on an individual basis so that we can understand them, understand what they celebrate, what's important to them, and also support them. So I'm going to just jump in with a few specific examples. So before I worked in Cobb, I worked over in Gwinnett County. And when I was in Gwinnett for several years, Ramadan was in the summer. And one year it was in the summer, it was in August when it was hot, 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 and football practice was going on. And I was super concerned, because it wasn't necessarily, this has been several years ago, but it wasn't necessarily well known by all of the folks that I thought probably could be affected, that we might have kids who were trying to play football and get into conditioning for fall football, who were trying to do this out in the heat during Ramadan. Now, those of you, why was this concerning to me? Yes, because of fasting, not only going out without food, but also going without water. As soon as as young Muslim children reach adolescence, then they begin to observe Ramadan, and they will go without food and water from the time the sun comes up, from daylight until from daybreak until sunset, from sunrise till sunset. And I thought, oh my goodness, if we have folks who don't know this, then we may put them in danger by having them participate in physical exertion when they aren't sufficiently hydrated. So was there an answer to this? Did I have someplace I could go in my student information system and say, who is celebrating Ramadan and who is not? No, I did not. So we had to talk about this and say, all right, what do we need to do? What do we need to be sensitive to? We need to make sure that if students tell us, no, I'm not hydrating, I'm fasting, that we talk to them about some precautions they might want to take. Being respectful, of course, of their right to want to be an active athlete at their school, but also keeping them safe. There's not a right answer here, but caring, respect, and understanding. Another thing that I always want folks to know about Ramadan, I have never quite exactly figured out how Ramadan is. I've read the descriptions quite a few times, but Ramadan moves throughout the year. It is calculated on the sighting of the new moon. And I cannot exactly explain it. So if somebody's on the call who can explain it, I would love it if somebody who has firsthand knowledge would do that. And feel free to come off mute if you are that person. While you're thinking about that, I will say this. I do know from having had the experience of traveling in Turkey on a trip that was focused on interfaith dialogue and international education with a group of folks who ranged from Southern Baptists from Alabama to Muslims from Turkey and Syria. I learned so much from that experience of traveling with folks. And one of the things that a person on the trip who's since become a friend and just someone for whom I have so much respect shared was that the thing about Ramadan that's so beautiful is that it's celebrated at a different time. It shifts slightly through the year, and that you experience Ramadan in different ways depending on where you live on the planet and the seasons that are going on. So if it's celebrated in the summer when it's hot and the days are long, it is very, very tiring and very strenuous to fast from the sunrise to the sunset. In the cooler times of the year, that might not be as arduous, but it's a different experience. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that our Muslim students will be fasting. March 22nd is the day that we expect Ramadan to begin. It will end on, it says it ends Thursday, April 20th, but I'm not sure that's exactly right because I think yes, it is right because Eid al-Fitr will be observed, which is the feast at the closing of Ramadan on Friday, April 21st. Now, those of you who are not Muslim on the call, what do you think that Muslim families who are observing Ramadan are going to do the second that the sun goes down? Well, they're going to have yes, go ahead.
I said eat.
Yes, they're going to have a festive dinner together. So that's another thing to know about Ramadan is that our Muslim students in the evenings, they are going to be together with their families. That's a very special time when they have an evening iftar dinner. And I had the honor of attending one a few years ago with my Muslim friends. And it was Keisha Lance Bottoms was the mayor of Atlanta at the time. And the mayor hosted an iftar dinner. And that was a very, very special experience. So I want to encourage all of you, if you have not ever had a chance to experience sharing an iftar dinner with Muslim friends, and if you are lucky enough to be invited, then I just encourage you to take part because it's truly wonderful. And I think it's more meaningful. It was more meaningful to me because I had chosen to try to observe the fast during the day so I could appreciate how really rigorous this is in a way that I to fast all day, every day, go without food and water for a whole month, to discipline yourself and to, as part of your religious tradition and your discipline and your observance of what you believe is the right way to show and observe what is holy. It's really cool. So Ramadan is the first thing, and I chose to bring it up first because it's coming up really soon. And a lot of folks in your schools, you may not be aware of it, may not be thinking about it. You may or may not have a lot of Muslim students, but do you know? And if you don't know, then, this might be a good time to try to think about, just being observant, asking questions. If you know that some folks did not celebrate Christmas, and depending on where they're from, if they are from places like Syria, if they're from places like Jordan or Egypt, then it could very well be. And of course, we want to find out and honor that if we can, if they want to share. That we never want to be nosy. We just want to be, as I said, curious and empathetic. I'm going to go next to jump into the fall and just say we need to be also aware of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. These were the holidays that nearly tripped up my poor colleague, who is the counselor. And, you know, just making certain that here, typical Americans are in the middle, who are Christians, Catholic or not religious, may not see these holidays because they occur in the middle of sports crazed America time, when we're worried about the end of the baseball, you know, season, and fall football season has started and all this is going on. But the high holy days are going on. The Jewish high holy days are going on. So when you're thinking about what you're planning for your calendar, you need to be aware of these dates. You need to think about these dates. These holidays are much more significant for our Jewish colleagues and friends and students and families than Hanukkah. These are the high holy days. So the day of the Jewish New Year, the Day of Atonement. So, and is there anyone here who would like to speak a little bit about either one of these holidays?
I can a little bit. What I was
Please.
thinking when you were talking about Ramadan is, in the Jewish faith, the calendar goes by the lunar calendar. So all of these holidays also kind of rotate depending on the lunar calendar. And I probably the same with Ramadan. And Rosh Hashanah is the new year, the Jewish New Year. It also tends, the Jewish holidays also tend to be after Yom Kippur, which is the fast, the Day of Atonement. There's a week of it's harvest, it's gathering. It's called Sukkot. It's a more minor holiday, but still really important. And they do follow, because it's the lunar year, they tend to follow the seasons, as probably does the Ramadan holiday, as do the Ramadan holidays. It can get pretty hot on Yom Kippur. And it's a 26 or 27 hour fast, no water or food. So I don't know if there are any refugees coming that are Jewish that do celebrate, but that's also something to keep in mind.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful addition to my understanding here. Thank you so much. I think, again, the idea, so many of our religious holidays are around and founded in the lunar calendar. I think because, you know, it goes back to a time when our lives were much more in sync with the
agricultural.
Yes, agriculture and weather and everything like that. I just celebrated Lunar New Year with some Chinese friends, and they were talking about, you know, how important, you know, hunting, fishing, and agriculture is into the, and we had wonderful, I had a wonderful meal with them, and a wonderful set of insights into that celebration, which of course is celebrated by billions and billions of folks. I'm really interested when you just said that between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, there is a celebration of the harvest. One of the things that occurs to me is that as we have different things that we're celebrating at different times. So the harvest is celebrated then in between the Day of Atonement and the Jewish New Year, you know, in the Jewish faith. Traditional American it's in November. You know, it would be interesting for us to kind of juxtapose and help draw our students into dialogue about holidays and what they celebrate and when it's celebrated and what it means to them. I think it's good for us to understand that there are similarities, even when there seems to be it's a different time, it's a different holiday, but there are some similarities there. And celebrating and gratitude for the abundance of the harvest is something that is a hallmark of a lot of cultures. Let's see, let me check the time. I don't want to make sure I'm doing fine, I think. So let me move on a bit. So Diwali, The Festival of Lights this year will be on Sunday, November 12th, 2023. This is one of the major festival for Hindu religions. And I really think it is interesting to see how much more prominent this is also becoming in some of our communities. Do any of you have students who celebrate Diwali? I guess we probably.
Dr. Webb, yeah, this is Sasha from East Valley. We have the entire bus that specifically goes to the apartment complex called Riverside, and they all Indian families.
Oh,
And all the kids do come up dressed up that day, and they have a special sense, you know, there's just the aroma around them, and some of them would have like, you know, a dot on the forehead. It's just beautiful.
oh, that's wonderful. That is so wonderful. Thank you, Sasha. And I understand that the Festival of Lights is often celebrated for up to 5 days. And, you know, that it's really hard to know. The origins go back so deep in history, and there's so many different texts that, but it is the celebration of the triumph of light over darkness and the triumph of good over evil. So, I mean, just what a wonderful celebration. So something else to be aware of, and to also be respectful of, as we're thinking about our students. Now, finally here, I've got a few resources I'm going to share, and I think I shared my screen, so I think you should follow me to some of these. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just open a few of these resources. Now, the first question I have is, are you following me to the resources? You see it?
Yes.
So this is the Boy Scouts of America, and this is one thing that I just loved when I got to this one. I thought my poor counselor, she would have loved to see this. Do not schedule scouting events on red highlighted dates. And I thought, if programs must be scheduled, councils should arrange alternate dates that do not conflict with that religion's holidays. So I thought, well, this is really a powerful statement. So looking here, the Boy Scouts provide all of the calendar, and then they provide underneath each month sort of a little glossary regarding to what the different celebrations are. So that is very helpful, and you can kind of scroll through.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're not able to see that slide.
Oh,
or that
perfect. Let me
screen.
see what I can do here. Let me reshare.
Okay.
Hang on just
We
a
just see your
second.
resources slide.
Nope, let me go. Let me see if I can reshare then. Zoom. Let me stop share. Let me share again. All right, let's try that. How's that?
Yes, Boy Scouts. Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. So again, this is just a really practical resource. You can see by month what's going on. You can see the different Christian, Eastern Orthodox, Hindu, Zoroastrian holidays, what they are. And then you can also kind of just scroll through month by month. And last year, I don't know if many of you noticed, but last year, Ramadan, Easter, and Passover, of course, Passover and Easter are always close, but it's not always it's not usual for Ramadan to be, but all three of those holidays coincided for a period of time, for a week. So it was quite interesting to see all the different holidays. So again, the little admonition not to schedule anything on red highlighted dates. And you can see here, the Sikh religion is highlighted. And then again here, where Ramadan starts in March. So that's one resource. And I'm going to go here, and I'm going to really quickly go over and make sure when I'm sharing my screen, I'm on the actual screen. Let's see here. Well, let me do this a different way. I was trying to make sure I could just go from one to one, but I will just share and then reshare. I will just switch and then reshare. A couple of the others I don't really actually have to share, but I would like to share one other one. That's this Brandeis resource that I think is very nice. So let me share that one. Share my screen. Yes. So Brandeis University, can you see my screen? Can you see the Brandeis University Center for Spiritual Life glossary? I can't see anybody, so somebody
Yes.
can. Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Perfect. Well, what I love about this is there's a glossary. So, you know, a glossary to increase religious literacy. There's quite a lot. And it's very interesting. You know, they're talking about the Dharmic prayer space. And the first thing they say is where it's located on their campus and what it is, a prayer center for students of the Hindu, Jain, and Sikh faiths, and also appropriate for Buddhist practitioners. I think this is something that's very interesting. I don't know if any of you have ever thought of this, but probably you have. But when I was traveling in Turkey, and my fellow travelers, you know, were observant Muslims, they were praying 5 times throughout the day. And so, you know, we would be wandering along and they would literally quietly withdraw very unobtrusively and disappear to go and pray. And I was just really struck by the way they fit this into their day. And you think about the American school and the American bell schedule and the physics and the space, and you think there really isn't the ability, an easy ability to integrate that in. So even beyond holidays, you know, thinking about how folks, how kids experience the actual day. There is a small private school that I have several colleagues who've worked there out in Gwinnett called Al-Falah. And I think one of the things that is so nice about that school is that it does provide a safe space for Muslim children to be able to observe, to be observant, just like a Catholic school would have, you know, allow for a prayer at the start of classes that we can't do in the public schools in the United States. So it's just something to just be aware of and to think of. But just all of the different terms, many of which are familiar, but some of which are not, and are very, very interesting to explore. So I am going to stop sharing now and come back to y'all, because really at this point, I think what we want to do is talk a little bit about what we can do to be curious, empathetic, and respectful, and how we can help our students, whether they are completely secular and they don't celebrate any holidays that have anything to do with religious belief, or whether they are very observant and religious, or whether they are traditional Americans who love all the good old USA holidays, while we can bring them into dialogue and community with each other and appreciate one another. So I'd like to give you a chance to share some ideas about what you do in your classrooms and your context and your communities, and what we could do together and how we could learn from one another. So let me open up the dialogue. If you want, you're welcome to raise your hand if you want, but I think everybody's been super good about just being respectful. So just hop off mute if you would like to, if you have an idea.
Yes, Dr. Webb, this is Sasha from East Valley again. One here, I'm originally from Ukraine, and my co-worker, the other ESOL teacher in our school, her parents are from India. So we invited the interpreters from the International Welcome Center, and we asked them, we had a list of questions that we normally hear from our teachers, like why some Indian kids are using hands when they eat, or how schools in Brazil look like. So we put together a list of questions that teachers had over the years, and we presented them to the interpreters and asked them to come up with a short, like 10 to 15 minutes presentation. And we had a little cultural professional development, and teachers were just so thankful. It was just a great experience. We're going to wait for a few years, and then I'm going to repeat it again, like to see if we have more Ukrainian families coming in, to see if we can talk about that, etc. So it was really good.
I love it, Sasha. I love it. That is so amazing. We did something like that when I was over in Gwinnett. It wasn't so focused on holidays, but like you said, it was focused a wider variety of things. What are some characteristics that you need to be aware of? And I will never forget our Vietnamese interpreter sharing about the fact that in the Vietnamese cultures, to show respect, students will, not look you directly in their eye. They will look down to show respect, and that if they're nervous, they might laugh, and they might, not, just to try to ease the tension. And I will never forget this experience. This big grain-fed, football coach and AP was listening to this, and you could just see his face. He just was like, and he literally hit himself on the head. He said, "Oh no, oh my gosh." He said, "I just did everything wrong with this kid today." She said, "I yanked him out of the class, and I said, 'Look me in the eye,' and blah, blah, blah." And then when I said, "You think this is funny?" He said, "I owe this kid such an apology." And, the cultural insights that we get by being curious and being empathetic, I mean, it makes such a difference. So yes, we just need to learn more about all aspects of culture. All right, Rita, I see something was going by in the chat. Like you had a comment. Do you want to come off mute?
Yes, somebody else mentioned Common Lit, and I just said that I agree that there are several resources that are good to highlight different religious celebrations, and it makes students feel that they are seen and heard. So it helps everyone to understand cultures, and Common Lit has the resource where it automatically translates multiple languages as well. So
nice.
EL classes.
Nice. That's a great tip. That's a great tip. Have other folks used Common Lit?
So I was the person who used Common Lit and mentioned it in the chat. I like it because it pairs texts for you. So like recommend texts. It'll also recommend related media. So with my class of ESOL students, I work at a small private Christian school, and every year we do something for Lunar New Year because a lot of our international students are from Korea, China, and this year we have somebody from Vietnam, but in the class we also had somebody from Brazil. So I wanted to bring about something that probably most of the students in the class wouldn't know, which was the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so I looked up on Common Lit and we found some videos to explain it. We also found 2 different texts. So we did a little bit of a jigsaw information gap. And then the students actually got up and presented about their own cultures at chapel based on questions that students in the journalism class at our school wanted to ask me. And I said, I'm just the coordinator. So you'll get to hear from the students during the chapel. So that was quite well received. We had like a Mentimeter so that the 300 plus upper school students could respond to, hey, this is something new I learned, or something like that. Yeah, so.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. That is super good. Tiffany, thank you for mentioning that. And thank you. That's a great way to celebrate, and a great way to do it when you're using the text, I think is really nice, because we're all trying to get our kids to interact and be and really be looking at texts and reasoning from evidence and everything in the text. So I love it. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. One of the things you said, you were talking about thinking about what you wanted to bring in. I was thinking the other day about, of course, New Year's and Lunar New Year. It seems like a no-brainer, but then today, now I'm thinking about, well, wait, we need to think about Jewish New Year, Lunar New Year, or Chinese New Year, since Jewish New Year is actually a lunar holiday. There's a whole dimension of what does the New Year mean across different cultures, I mean, that's just, and when does it happen? continually amazed by the people who either they don't know that the seasons are opposite on the bottom half on the southern sides of the planet, or they knew it when they were in high school and they've forgotten. Because recently I said, well, somebody said, well, why are these Brazilian kids coming in and, you know, they are finished up so-and-so? I said, well, their school year's off, their school year is different, their school calendar is different. They said, why would their school calendar be different? Well, but that's great, Tiffany. All right, other folks who would have like to make a suggestion or of something that we could pair or a way to bring different traditions into the classroom.
So Elizabeth, I teach 5th grade writing in Fulton County, and we started something this year called Culture Corner. I was able to pick 3 of my strong writers, and they go with a parent volunteer, and they interview a family from our school and find out information about, you know, what language they speak. They get to teach us a phrase that, you know, they say, foods and a recipe for a favorite dish. And so this is our first year doing this, and it's been a really amazing experience so far. We're hoping to get and then the students who are doing these interviews are going to be putting together a newsletter that will be shared with the school, and then also the interview and the newsletter will be aired on our, you know, morning announcements.
Wow.
That was really
Giving
cool.
them so many chances to bring their knowledge in, write about it, talk about it, share it, and publish it. David Chiesa, I think she's training up some future writers for, you know, journals like the Georgia TESOL Journal, things like that. But that's fantastic. That is just wonderful. It makes me think, last night I was at one of our elementary schools and we had about 16 parents. There's moms, they're all moms, happen to all be moms. And the teacher, Ms. O'Hara, had, she's hilarious. She's, her background is Irish, but her Spanish is quite good. And I keep forgetting the story about why her Spanish is so good, but her Spanish is pretty darn good. So she was going back and forth between English and Spanish, and she was having her birthday, and all the moms had brought things they had baked. And it was just this lovely, just very nice, organic expression of different cultures. Mostly Central American cultures, but I think we had Brazilian parents, we had parents from Central America, we had parents from, I'm not sure, I think we had 6 countries represented. So Tuli, David Chiesa is saying in the chat he would love to talk with you more about the Cultural Corners Unfold. David Chiesa, I had another conversation that made me think of you and it was this week, and it was about your dialogic journals. David uses dialogic journals in his teaching, and he shared that at the Georgia TESOL conference. And one of our middle school teachers was sharing with me that his students are beginning to write so much more now that he has been using the dialogic journal. So I thought about dialogic journals when I was thinking about this presentation, because I thought some of these things maybe kids might be too shy to share out in the class. So David, could you say maybe a word about how dialogic journals might fit into this?
Yeah, so dialogue journals are systematic interactions between peers, a teacher or student, usually with my children, with the young ELs I support between 2nd grade and 5th grade. I have to provide them a little bit more scaffolding though, with more concrete inquiries that they write back and forth with me on. But when I work with middle school, high school students, it's telling about experience. We just go from there. It's literally, I write one day, give to them, they rewrite what I wrote, write back to me. We go back and forth, literally in paper and pencil notebooks. It's a wonderful experience, and it improves their writing comprehension and cultural competence, and it's an amazing experience.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. When I think about what, at least in the data that I see, it seems that the hardest thing for our students to do is to really develop their speaking and their writing skills to the high level they need to be able to, you know, demonstrate that they're proficient in English and exit. And don't we all want our kids to reach that proficiency and to be able to demonstrate that proficiency while also hopefully maintaining and increasing and strengthening their proficiency in their home language? So I love anything that we can do to just get them engaged in writing and get them engaged in speaking about things that are important to them. Well, it is 6:28, so I'm going to draw this to a close, but I just want to share with you all. I heard someone say that they had students from just different cultures and different Asian cultures that they had celebrated with recently, and that some of the students were from Vietnam. And I remember I learned something new about Lunar New Year this year. In the Lunar New Year calendar, we have a Pan-Asian Lunar New Year celebration here in the city of Decatur. And it was at Legacy Park this year. It's our second year. And so it's not yet an annual because it'll have to be 3 years before it gets to be annual. And it was, in most countries, it was the year of the rabbit, but in Vietnam, it's the year of the cat. So in Decatur, because we had a Pan-Asian celebration, it was the year of the cabbit. So if you look online, you can find you can find the art that was student drawn art for the year of the cabbit. And I have one in my office now. I meant to bring it home to show you, but I forgot. But I really want us all to maybe take that as a sort of sign of how we can be together, whimsical and curious and creative and learning from each other and including. I love the way that they drew the circle that made sure that we're not going to say, well, we're just going to say it's the year of the rabbit because it's everybody else in those, you know. They said, no, we're going to make it the year of the cabbit. So I just want to encourage all of us that as we are welcoming students who are coming into a culture that's unfamiliar, a school system that's unfamiliar, and a new language, and that we help them understand that we see and we respect and we want to learn about them, and we want their culture, their celebrations, their holidays are important to us. And any concluding thoughts from anybody from the group? If not, that is all I have this evening. Donna Byers, I'll turn it back over to you to close out for Georgia TESOL.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please don't forget to fill out our survey and our, if you want a certificate of attendance. Also, don't forget our next session, which is going to be
You got muted somehow, Donna, when the slides came up.
Oh, I am so sorry. Did you hear anything I said?
I heard, the last thing we heard was our next session, which is going to be.
Oh, on March 2nd. I'm sorry. When I share, it mutes me. I'm not sure what's happening, but I hope everybody will join us again on March 2nd. And thank you for joining us here this evening.
Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate all that you do. Thank you, Donna, for moderating. Thank you all the Georgia TESOL folks on the call who helped organize this. So thank you all. Have a great evening. Enjoy your dinner.